This train depot was originally located in Chuckey, Tennessee, approximately 15 miles southwest of its present location in Jonesboro, Tennessee. With the coming of the railroad, Fullen's Depot, as it was originally called, established itself as one of the many stops for water and wood to feed the steam-powered engines. The original depot was described as a simple shack with sides planked vertically. During this time, Fullen had officially changed its name to Chuckey City and was shortened to Chuckey by the U.S. Postal Service in 1904. The original depot burned in 1905, and a new depot was built in 1906. This new Chuckey depot consisted of 2 public waiting rooms and a ticket office. Chuckey thrived as long as the railroad remained the dominant mode of travel and shipping. But as the interstate networks expanded and alternate modes of shipping became popular, businesses began to move away. The community of Chuckey, whose prosperity was so closely tied to the railroad, turned to larger towns such as Greenville for commercial and retail needs. The Chuckey Depot ceased to be used in the mid-1900s and sat abandoned for decades. Sitting on the railroad's right-of-way, the depot was threatened with demolition. Due to railroad policy, the building could not stay in its original location. The next step was to find another home for this iconic building. The Babb family, who owned the depot, worked within the community to identify alternate locations. Eventually, the decision was made to relocate the building to Jonesboro. Jonesboro was eager to have the structure, there was a plan in place for its eventual use, and the town has a proven culture of historic preservation. In a perfect world, the building would have been saved in its original location, or at least found another home, along with the plan to maintain it in Chuckey. In the time provided by the railroad, that was not to be. Relocating a historic structure is never a good thing to do, but sometimes it's the only way to save it. The job of moving the depot was a meticulous task undertaken by the town of Jonesboro and the Heritage Alliance. A numbering system was created to identify the individual pieces of the structure prior to demolition. Codes were developed for each room of the building, with coordinates representing the compass ordinate of each element, its corresponding room number, and its position within that room. This system was repeated on the building's exterior. For example, a window assembly removed from the north wall of the depot's ticket room received the code NTR1 window. This process was repeated for thousands of different components throughout the structure. Each was entered into a corresponding database and onto the measured drawings, completing the documentation process. Dismantling, labeling, and bundling the building took just over a month and was completed in August of 2011. During that time, the town of Jonesboro put in place the necessary property agreements and identified the team tasked with its reconstruction. In almost all instances, original material from the depot was used. Only where it was deteriorated beyond repair, such as the roof, were newer materials used. Many artifacts found within and around the building's original site were preserved by the Babb family and became part of their donation to the town. These items are displayed throughout the museum and include an original waiting room bench, light fixtures, and public notice boards. Today, this beautifully restored building helps to tell the story of the East Tennessee and Virginia Railroad and the communities through which it ran.
Every day, hundreds of offenders all across the state are working to serve Tennessee's communities, to give back and become better men and better women. TDOC is proud to partner with these communities and does everything possible to serve their needs. But these partnerships don't just benefit the communities and taxpayers, they benefit TDOC's offenders by giving them opportunities to learn and practice marketable skills that will allow them to secure employment once released. In TDOC's new series, Working for Second Chances, we take a closer look at the work being done and the impact of the various projects on both the communities and TDOC's offenders. Our first stop takes us to Jonesboro, Tennessee's oldest town, where City Operations Manager Craig Ford gave us a tour of the various projects that have been completed there.
Hello again, Mr. Ford.
Good afternoon.
How's it going, sir?
Great, great.
Good deal. Well, we are here at the Chuckey Train Depot, correct?
Correct.
So, all right, I'm really excited for you to tell me about this train depot and kind of how this was the beginning of the partnership between the town of Jonesboro and the correctional work lines from Northeast Correctional Complex.
Yes, in fact, this was our very first project in which this partnership developed from. So, you know, it's a special project to me.
Okay, so you want to go in and show me around?
Absolutely.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
So we're standing here inside the original ticket office of the train depot, correct?
That is correct. You know, one of the biggest challenges that we saw with this was twofold. One is, when we took it down initially, it was stored on tractor trailers for about 4 or 5 years before we put it up. So when we actually began to erect this building or to put it back, we didn't have any of the original inmates that was with us when we took it down. And then one of the other things that was very difficult about this project is that it actually, when we took it down, we listed everything that came out of it through a compass, northeast, south, and west. Well, when we took it down in Chuckey, it was on the other side of the tracks facing in a different direction. So when we started putting this up, north now was south, east was now west. So that was very difficult in itself. But this is one of the original ticket offices. And I would like to point out to you, we can see in here a little bit earlier, we have one of the original benches that came out of this depot that was constructed in 1907. This bench was actually constructed by the labor crew as an exact replica of the bench that came out of the original depot.
So this is a brand new bench.
Yes.
And over here is the original bench from the train depot that's over 100 years old.
That is correct.
So here we have a 100-plus-year-old bench, and its identical twin, which is not even a year old.
Made to look like 100 years old.
Made to look like that's
There you go.
incredible.
Yeah.
So I think that's also another very interesting point. As you said, this is over 100 years old, and as you're about to show us in here, just the craftsmanship that goes in, it's very true to the time period. And I'm really looking forward to you telling me a little bit more about how the offenders in Jonesboro worked to make sure this stayed historically accurate.
And no question, this area right here that we're standing in this hallway, this was basically the employee work area. This is where you had, you know, the ticket masters that would be here selling freight and passenger ticketing. And of course, this thing also served as a post office as well. And we have some of the original things out of the old post office that will eventually go on display here.
That's incredible. This looks absolutely incredible. And you say that this is authentic to the time period. Everything in this room is time period specific to the early 1900s.
It is. Of course, this was a huge warehouse, and most of this, you know, freight come in from the tracks and it went out on the other side in trucks. The scales there, when we took them down, actually worked, and we've got to do a little bit of work on them, but we'll get those scales back in operable order as well. But it was amazing to me that they were still working after all those years. Now, imagine this being a warehouse, and as such, when it was built in 1907, you had basically 2 to 6 floorboards with huge cracks in them. You had no interior wall covering whatsoever, and basically the same thing for the roof area. So what we had to do, with this being a museum, you have to work on climate control as much as possible. So, you know, we found a business over in Carter County. It was a reclaimed lumber business. This lumber that's in this flooring actually came from a dairy barn, or a barn that was built in 1890. And each one of these planks was milled down to the same thickness so it could be used for flooring. Same can be said, you know, we put drywall on the east and west end of the building, but we wanted to do shiplap on the north and south side of the building. So the shiplap on these walls was taken out of a barn that was built, I think, in 1900 from the New England area. So, you know, the fact that this building was built in 1907, you know, we wanted to stay as period specific with as many of the materials that we could. You know, the rafters overhead are very large, the trusses. We were able to make the repairs from those trusses with some lumber from the floor trusses that obviously no one is going to see. The roof or the ceiling had to be insulated. So what we did is we got creative. We put some stripping in that would allow us to put some insulation in there, and we actually put in beadboard, and we had the beadboard stained to match relatively close the colors of the trusses, so it wouldn't overpower the room, that the trusses would still overpower the room as they should.
That's incredible. Obviously, a lot of work went into this, not just because it was a labor-intensive project, but because a lot of care had to be given in ensuring, again, that it was very historically accurate and authentic. And as you were saying earlier, there was, just the floor plan and design was almost completely opposite from the original, just due to the layout. What was that like for you, trusting our vendors to do that work and then seeing how great they did? I mean, it must have been reassuring for you, knowing that you guys have them on so many other projects, knowing that they are so just thoughtful of detail and put so much into their work.
Sure, and we had the opportunity to finish some other projects before we began to put this back up. So we obviously knew what the skill set was for them to be able to do that. And, there was a lot of attention to detail paid to this building because, you want it to be period specific, but on the same token, you want, it still has to be, come up to some modern day standards as well.
Absolutely. What was it about the work done on this project early on that made you guys want to bring them onto other projects? I know you said that this project wasn't finished until several others had been worked on, but this was the first one. So what was it about the offender work crews that you guys had brought on that made you want to continue this partnership with TDSE?
Well, there's a few things there. Obviously, one is, very quickly we saw they had the ability to do it. The other thing is that they were obviously had the capability to do it. These individuals were, not only did they have the ability to do good work in the construction area, but they were very capable of doing it as well. And then, with that, it obviously it boils down to cost.
Well, Mr. Ford, you're not only a great city leader, but you're also one heck of a historian. And this has been an incredible lesson for me. And also I'm extremely excited to learn that our vendors played such a great role. I'm excited to learn about another historical site that we've worked on with you guys that you've been telling me about. But before we leave, I think it would be just a huge mistake if I left here without hitting that big train signal right up there.
Absolutely.
Can I do that?
I agree with you.
All right. That's awesome. I feel like a little kid.
Great.